chilling Star Wars theory explains why Padme didn't turn on Anakin after the Tusken Massacre. Of perhaps any other character in Star Wars, Padme Amidala is known for having the strongest moral conscience, which makes her quick forgiveness of Anakin Skywalker's murder of the Tuskens in Star Wars. Episode 2: Attack of the Clones extremely puzzling. Padme has always been vocal about what she believes in, particularly as someone who's had a strong, influential voice ever since a young age. As the Queen of Naboo, Padme was not only able to bring awareness to important issues, but was also able to act upon them. Despite this, she seems to have little reluctance about being with Anakin after he confesses that he's murdered the Tuskens who captured and killed his mother in Attack of the Clones, even after he insists he'd gone after the women and the children in addition to the men. In fact, all Padme really says in response to this confession is, "To be angry is to be human," which overall glazes over the full devastation of Anakin's actions. This theory surmises that her ability to move past Anakin's massacre so quickly may stem from her own childhood. Padme grew up on a world divided by race. Unfortunately, Padme is no stranger to a world where people view themselves as superior to other species in the Star Wars galaxy. On Naboo, there's a history of racial conflict between the Naboo, people like Padme, and Gungans, people like Jar Jar Binks. This is highlighted in Star Wars Episode I, The Phantom Menace, particularly when Padme approaches the Gungans to establish an alliance between their people in a fight against the Trade Federation. While Padme was able to overcome this prejudice to create their alliance, her world had trouble doing so for a long time. In fact, this division was still present during her reign as queen, up until the point where the Trade Federation necessitated their friendship. It's worth wondering, then, why Padme wouldn't have attempted to create peace earlier if she truly thought it to be wrong. There's no doubt that the Naboo saw themselves as superior to Gungans, which is why the two groups had so many issues. Padme could have attempted to resolve this earlier, but didn't. There is, of course, another member of the Naboo who would have been even more affected by this division. Palpatine used prejudice as a weapon. Had he learned this from Naboo? Palpatine, who was also from Naboo, famously used prejudice as a weapon as he rose to power to establish his galactic empire. He often pitted the galaxy against specific groups who stood in the way of his end goal, with perhaps the most notable example being the Jedi. Palpatine's empire even refused to promote alien species into their ranks, with Grand Admiral Thrawn serving as the sole exception. Prejudice was woven into the very fabric of Palpatine's regime, and it seems likely that this could have been more than the dark influence of the Sith within him. As a normal part of his environment growing up, Palpatine would have had even fewer reservations about using this prejudice as a weapon later on. The divisiveness on Naboo between the Naboo and the Gungans could have instilled Palpatine with a prejudice that shaped his worldview before the dark side even called to him. This would have made it much easier for him to then fall and use prejudices to his advantage. As a normal part of his environment growing up, Palpatine would have had even fewer reservations about using this prejudice as a weapon later on. Even if the divide between the Naboo and the Gungans wasn't that extreme, it still could have served as a model for the future emperor. Padme may have inherited the prejudice of her homeworld. While Padme is still leagues away from Palpatine in terms of evil and an utter lack of empathy and morality, it could be that she was also influenced by the same kind of prejudice. She calls out injustice where she sees it, but there are still prejudices blinding her that she has a harder time acknowledging due to the way she was raised on Naboo. This prejudice, particularly the superiority of one race over another, could be a darker reason behind why Padme failed to show hesitance in forgiving Anakin and standing by him after his Tusken massacre. Padme may have seen the Tuskens the same way the Naboo had seen the Gungans, a race that was less superior than her own, Given how Tuskens are treated in Star Wars canon up until The Mandalorian, it sadly wouldn't be surprising for this to be the case. Thankfully, the Tuskens have been given their due justice and humanity, but this is something Padme may have looked past due to a dark lens she hadn't even fully realized she'd been looking through. Padme Amidala might have been one of the galaxy's most just voices, but even she was not flawless.